All right. So I said that I want to address another video topic. Have to excuse the sun, which is absolutely gorgeous right now, but part of our feature presentation apparently. And what more could one want as a star in your presentation than the sun, right? Okay. Do you want to be really popular? Do you want people to respect you? Do you want to be the person that people emulate and say, I want to be like that guy? Or do you want to really be good? Now, this is one of those questions in martial arts, okay? That people will say one thing and they never really truly mean it. And very few people actually mean what they say regarding this question, okay? The question again is, what is your purpose in studying and training in martial arts beyond what everybody will say when you ask that question? I want to be able to defend myself. I want to be in better physical condition. Okay? Let's get past that. When you are doing this a while, what do you really want to attain in your training? You have to ask yourself this question, and you don't have to be honest with me, but you have to be honest with yourself. Okay? I'm going to tell you a story about somebody who I'm training right now, okay? And we'll get this video. I know I'm speaking about him. He struggles with things, okay? And he comes up with ideas that constantly, he's got to look at again. It's very seldom does he ever get a chance to say, wow, I got this down. I'm good, okay? It's really unfair to him, okay? I mean, it's not obvious. I mean, I think everybody can get a sense of who you're dealing with from my videos. I mean, I'm not the guy that's going to be like the drill sergeant, or I'm just going to tell you that, you suck and, just get out of here. Or, I mean, it's not my way. But when it comes to being hard on people, okay, it can be very deceptive because you can be very understanding, kind, and really be putting a lot on somebody in order to do better. All right? So there's a whole science to motivating people, which is a topic for another time. But I'm not talking any intentions, okay? Any subterfuge. I'm talking about just when somebody says and indicates to you that they really want to get better. What does that take? And it's very different than what you might think, okay? In any one of these organizations where you practice martial arts, there's always going to be opportunities to shine, okay? To go for belts, to attain status, okay? And most people want popularity, okay? They want to plug into this idea that I'm studying this system because it's the greatest system on earth, and by being part of that system, I am a better person. And after a while, what happens in martial arts is you become stylized and conditioned into a track, and you get easier and easier to think that you're getting better, while what you're really doing is, for increasingly less and less time, are you really getting better, and more time is spent doing the things that make that style what it is, okay? to look like the person who practices, guys who do Kempo, guys who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whatever, okay? Guys who do karate, looking and starting to mimic those body movements so that you act like someone who does that style. And then you get cocky and say, well, I train hard and other people don't train hard. I've seen a lot of these things on social media. You get somebody, a lot of attractive young people, and they're training hard, and then they talk about, well, we're training every day. And look, let me tell you something, okay? Most of that training at a certain point is allegiance to a style or a system. Don't fool yourself, all right? And I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. As a matter of fact, if you study the ancient Koryu in Japan, more so than the older Chinese arts, you will find that most of those arts is exactly that, okay? Does that mean they're bad? No, actually the Koryu arts are the true combat arts. They are the arts that actually have it documented, were used on battlefields, okay, in multiple conflicts, etc., okay? So they are very qualified to speak on combat, even though people laugh at them a lot of times. And 90% in those arts involve retaining so that the art can perpetuate, okay? I'm making that figure up, but I'm sure I'm right. I might be even greater. Very little of that system is devoted to you getting better. When you look at combat, and you will find that if you study history, the Greek understanding of glory, okay, was a fundamental occurrence in European and the history of the Western world, because when you started to develop boxing and wrestling, those were originally arts used for the military and for ritual purposes, okay? Sumo-te is a ritual art in Japan. It is the only indigenous art in Japan, okay? Older indigenous art, okay? It was a ritual wrestling style. Other wrestling styles and boxing styles were used to train military, okay? Back in times when people fought more imminently, okay? And you will find that only when you had this concept of competition and individual glory, okay? When Prometheus sold himself out to the gods and gave fire to humanity, okay? Which repeats itself in that myth in Frankenstein and so many other ways, okay? Glory, the individual might of the boxer as a champion, of a wrestler as the winner against another developed, okay? The idea of individual excellence and competition is a relatively new development in the history of human combat, hopology, okay? So, with that understanding, okay, you can begin to understand how that changed so many fundamentals, and why when you train in any sort of a dojo now, any sort of a do art in Japan, as opposed to a bugai, a military art, and most of the other systems, it's this idea of individual excellence that is perpetuated, all right? And only in those conditions can an individual be said to be able to choose their purpose. You have a gift of incredible magnitude in that existential decision for you to make. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I talk about my student who I'm referring to, I know it's not easy for him. It wasn't easy for me when I decided to do things the way I decided to do things. But do not be deceived. there is no such thing as a great style, okay? Or there are bad styles. There are things that are done wrong, okay? However, a lot of what goes for good and bad, technique, etc. Technique, you cannot have good technique if you don't really understand the building blocks of responsive movement and how your body should be moving and how you psychologically should be prepared. Understanding trauma, understanding stress under life and death conditions. There is no technique that will substitute for that, okay? You understand that? You have to learn how to understand those things, and you have to have a teacher who's willing to take you through those things, okay? So there is no technique for that. There is no magic art. There is no magic system, okay? When the Gracies came over here and fought, they were professional fighters. They were training 24/7. They were fighting guys in the original UFC who were plumbers and trained 3 times a week in a dojo. It wasn't the betterness of their system, okay? They were professional. It would be like taking a professional boxer and putting them in the ring against somebody, okay? So I'm just giving you examples here. If you decide that you really want to be better, you have a hell of a road ahead of you, my friend, okay? I have been training in the martial arts for many, many moons, and recognition, I have very little. People who really know and understand recognize me. I have students who have accomplished great things and are themselves great martial artists and other such things. But I am no grand poobah. I have no tin throne declaring me the best. Do not have the primacy of the best style, the best system, okay? I do not make lots and lots of money doing this, because if you really, really want to be excellent, that's the reward you get, is your excellence, okay? When I was in the monastery, I lived in a Buddhist monastery in upstate New York for a period of time, and there was a sort of an old saw that went around that when you first entered the monastery gates, they usually had you wait outside for a period of time, traditionally, and it was so exciting. They finally let you in, and everything was glorious. You were walking on air, and you could just, the mountains looked different somehow, and everything was interconnected, and you could feel it. Then you trained for many years and hard work, and gradually you saw, and you had all these, your own struggles, and you developed spiritually, and as you walked out the monastery gate, things looked the same as when you walked in, okay? So the point here is this think of enlightenment, the understanding that you are somehow better or greater, whether that be through a style or anything else, is in and of itself a trap. The minute you let ego confine you, the minute you let false impressions, okay, impress you, you're just taking a step backwards, okay? There are very few people who are really good in a way that is exceptional. There are a lot of good martial artists. There are a lot of very talented individuals who have done a system for a long time, and they're very good at it, and that's to be commended. And a lot of them are good people, and I can tell you that a lot of them probably have experienced some of these same struggles I'm referring to, but to really truly be able and exceptional, where your technique is totally that good and your capability to transfer it is that good, it's no game, and it's not for the faint of heart. And I have to applaud my student, because I'm talking about one particular student in this case, because it is extremely a lonely path that very few will take. And just ask yourself, what's your path? What path do you want to take? Think about it.